Well, I think that when you think about Donald Trump's overall plan, it is lower taxes and lower costs. He wants to make sure that on day one, he's going to end inflationary spending. He is going to make sure that he unleashes American energy, which is going to bring all the prices down for gas, for groceries, for housing. He also wants to make sure that he extends the Trump tax credits. Tax cuts. He also wants to make sure that there is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. You flip over to Kamala Harris's proposals. What she's going to do is double down on every single one of the inflationary spending proposals that she has defended and engaged in over the course of the last 4 years. In fact, she was the tie-breaking vote for $2.5 trillion worth of inflationary spending. Even President Obama's own economic advisors had said that this was going to cause inflation and prices to go through the roof, which of course it did. And on top of that, she is now proposing the largest tax hikes in American history. So there's a pretty wide divide in terms of the economic plans that these two candidates are moving forward with.
Well, I know she proudly talks about casting that tie-breaking vote, and I think the hikes you're referring to would be allowing the Trump-era tax cuts to expire. But I'd love to hear specifically about what the Trump campaign and the Republican Party are bringing forth today with reporting that is specific to manufacturing, that the campaign will lay out its pitch for foreign companies for why they should move their manufacturing operations here to the U.S. In that world, would they be spared the tariffs that Donald Trump has been proposing?
Well, certainly that has been a premise of Donald Trump's tariff policies over the course of his 4 years in office and the campaign since then, is that he wants to have policies that are going to encourage companies to manufacture here in America.
Mm-hmm. So that will be something new today that we'll hear about?
I certainly think that you'll have a continuation of those conversations about how we're going to get manufacturers to manufacture here in the United States instead of offshoring those jobs.
Because I understand that he's also looking at American companies, and the subject that we've been hearing the last 24 hours, the example is John Deere, Michael. Would American companies face tariffs on their goods if they move jobs or manufacturing outside of the U.S. the way we're hearing about John Deere?
I mean, it's certainly what the president mentioned last night. And again, you just go back to the fundamentals of his approach to tariffs and his approach to domestic manufacturing. Yeah. What he did over the course of his 4 years in office was pull every single lever that he could to try and incentivize manufacturing here in the United States to create those jobs here in America.
Yeah, in the case of a company like Deere that already has operations in South America and in Europe, would you just start tariffing them now?
I think we would have to wait and see how that gets fleshed out, and we'll wait and see what John Deere does.
Well, with the job market as tight as it is, I'm compelled by this idea of foreign companies bringing manufacturing hubs here to the U.S. Would we have to import workers? Would that be part of the conversation to loosen the reins, for instance, on legal immigration to fill those jobs?
I think that we have people here in America who would like those higher paid manufacturing jobs. We've got a number of people who have been laid off of jobs, who have moved out of jobs, who are taking lower paying jobs, people who are having to have 2 or even 3 jobs to be able to get by. The manufacturing, which was the bedrock of the American economy, is really something that President Trump has worked very hard over the course of his tenure to make sure that he's bringing into the U.S. And I think that we would have a workforce that would welcome those opportunities.
I want to ask you specifically about taxes, as the former president has proposed, as I mentioned, to cut the corporate tax rate. We mentioned eliminating tax on tips. We can add eliminating tax on overtime and Social Security, also restoring the SALT tax deduction, I think was the most recent addition here. Now, this is, Michael, where I'm supposed to ask you about these moves increasing the deficit and inflation, and you've had this conversation. I'd rather ask you, what don't economists we're talking with here on Bloomberg, or groups like the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, understand? What don't they get about Donald Trump's approach to tariffs and the deficit?
What we can say is that during his tenure, his first 4 years in office, that the economic policies that he put in place drove the American economy into a much stronger position. We had more people in the workforce than ever before. We had a lower unemployment rate for women, for blacks, for Hispanics, across every different sector, and we had a very, very strong economy. That is the Trump economy. That's what we need to get back to.
Okay. So they're wrong, though, right, Michael? We hear about them every day here on the air. It sounds like you think they're wrong.
What we saw under Donald Trump's 4 years in office was a very strong, robust policy that was built on these bedrock principles.
I want to ask you about fundraising, and this I know hits close to home for you as the chair of the RNC. There's reporting today that Donald Trump has yet to appear at a major fundraising event for the NRCC. Punchbowl reports that it's created an 8-figure hole in the committee's budget. You can tell me if that's real or not, Michael, but will the Republican National Committee end up dedicating money to the NRCC in this cycle?
What I will say is we work very closely with our friends over at the NRCC as well as the NRSC, which is the Senate committee. And we are going to have enough resources in this campaign to make sure that we get our message out to every American voter in all of our battleground states. We are in a fantastic position not only to win the election for the presidency, but to expand our majority in the House and be able to flip the Senate.
Early voting is underway, and I'm sure you don't need me to tell you. In states like Pennsylvania, Donald Trump talked about this at a rally just yesterday. Michael, let's listen to what he said.
We're here today because early voting begins in Pennsylvania over the next 2 weeks, and we need each and every one of you to go out. Just don't take anything for granted. We have to win Pennsylvania. Go out and make a plan to vote early, vote absentee, or vote in person on Election Day. Now we have this stupid stuff where you can vote 45 days early. I wonder what the hell happens during that 45. Let's move see these votes? We've got about 1 million votes in there. Let's move them. We're fixing the air conditioner in the room, right? No, it's terrible. What happened the last time was disgraceful.
I heard the pitch, Michael, and I think both parties agree that early voting has become a pretty important part of the strategy. What's stupid about it?
Well, look, what I'll say is this. We're going to have over half of the votes this cycle are going to be cast before Election Day. And the Republican Party, we are working overtime right now to talk to every single one of those voters, make sure that they are informed voters that are going into the polls. As the president said, it is great if you want to vote early. It's great if you want to vote by mail. It's great if you want to vote on Election Day. The key is you've got to make a plan, you've got to execute that plan, and you've got to deliver that vote.
Understood. So you don't think it's stupid?
What I would say is that right now we are working with the laws in all 50 states. We're going to take advantage of those laws, and we're going to encourage every single voter to take advantage of them and get their votes in.
I need to get your take on North Carolina as the former state party chair there, Michael. I'm sure you've been seeing the reports about Mark Robinson, and it's safe to say here that he has not admitted to any of this. In fact, he says that he's been hacked with some of the reports of language that he used on a porn site. In that case, we've got a real problem here. And I wonder if you're going to demand proof from Mark Robinson, or if Donald Trump needs to see proof that he did not say these things to maintain his endorsement and further the extent to which he could damage Republicans' chances in North Carolina. Michael, how concerned are you?
Well, certainly what I would say is that those comments are absolutely antithetical to Republican values. And if Mark Robinson's going to continue in this race, then yeah, I do think that he is going to have to demonstrate to the voters of North Carolina that those are not his words, his actions, or his values. In terms of other candidates, I think that every candidate is going to have to go out and talk to North Carolina about what the voters care about, which is the jobs, which is the economy, which is safety, which is security. Donald Trump is winning North Carolina right now because he is having a conversation with the voters about how he's going to restore our economy, he's going to rebuild our southern border, and how he's going to ensure that we are strong enough to protect American interests at home and abroad, as well as those of our allies.